venture capital, golden ticket, or giant Ponzi scheme?
Who wouldn't want a piece of that magical money showering pie? Let's get ready for Unicorn Porn, a podcast for founders who roll their eyes at phrases like "we're killing it" and "changing the world."
We riff about all the things you wish you could say out loud but can't or won't, like investor horror stories, founder mistakes, and bloated valuations.
The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn.
Nobody says if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money.
Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit.
I used to feel embarrassed that I wanted a lifestyle business.
Warning, these unfiltered conversations are highly opinionated, brutally honest, and politically incorrect. Please stop listening now if you're easily offended.
Unicorn Porn is brought to you by Lloyed, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-founder of Boast AI, and Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO at eWebinar.
Here's the thing, Lloyd. When you have a company, people can't wait to give you advice, especially founders. We can't help it, right? We love solving problems and then we want to solve it for other people completely unsolicited. I actually think one of the hardest things about being a founder is to know how to filter out advice, but also remain open-minded so you're not completely delusional. Because I actually think the line between confidence and delusion is quite fine, right? It brings me back to my meetup days, right, in Vancouver, when we'd go to a restaurant and talk about your ideas and validate it. I would try to talk to founders and see what they thought about my idea. And then I soon realized you talk to 10 people, you get 12 pieces of advice. So then I would always leave those things more confused than I went in. And then I would get these people saying to me things like, oh, what you really need is CEO, right? Just like completely BS things that made me feel kind of shitty as a person. I don't know if you've had like a similar experience with that.
I think being a founder is similar to being a parent. When you have kids, everyone wants to give you advice. You go to a party or you're out like at a gathering in the park, people just come up to you and give you advice. The world is full of armchair analysts, and they're not giving you advice for your good. They're giving you advice is because it makes them feel good. And so there's a lot of this. And if you look at the startup world, right, when you look at meetups and events, demo days and whatnot, the number of founders who've made it that hang out there are slim to none. So who are you getting advice from? Lawyers, bankers, armchair analysts, advisors, angels who write you like $5,000 checks and then do $5 million worth of due diligence. So you got to be very careful on who you're taking advice from. But this is a very exciting topic, right? We both heard a lot of BS advice. You know, recently I was listening to this video. Andrew Tate, who everyone knows, buys this, I think, gold or something Bugatti, like really fancy looking. And he's like, everyone's coming up to me and telling me, you know what, giving me advice on the color and whatnot. Like, you know, like, oh, I would have had this. And then he turns down to them and he's like, what color is your Bugatti? And everyone just shuts up.
Yeah, and mic drop.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, how much revenue is your startup doing?
Yeah, actually, this brings me back to, you know, obviously before David, who's my life partner, I stopped dating other founders because all we do is give each other advice. Like, we can't help it. And then it's just frustration over frustration because it's like, you're not in my company. You're not thinking about this. Oh, but have you thought about this? And I'm not saying like none of that is valid. Like, you need to not be delusional. But it's like, there does come a time when you just need to pick something and you're going to execute that with. So actually today I made a list of the 12 pieces of BS advice that you should ignore. Should we go through them?
Let's go through them. You know, the one thing I want to add here is some of the best coaches on the planet, they're more like therapists. If you've ever been to a therapist, they never give you advice.
Yeah, tell me more.
They deeply listen and help you come to the conclusion, because opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
Okay, so the first one is you have to start a company with a co-founder.
Ooh, this one is dicey because, you know, for every stereotype, there's an anomaly, right? Or there are many, many cases where single founders have crushed it. I mean, look at Zoho. I think it was a single founder company, bootstrapped, didn't raise venture capital, over $1 billion in revenue. I think having a co-founder is really helpful, but having a co-founder for the sake of having a co-founder is will be harmful, right? Ultimately, what you want is recognize your zone of genius. And a company is not just built on one zone of genius, it's multiple. And figure out what are the gaps you need to fill and find somebody to partner with that will deliver the outcome. But it's beyond that, right? Finding a co-founder is not just about like, what are my gaps? Do I find somebody? It's about values alignment too. And if you can't find somebody that you work well with and you don't have an alignment of values meaning how do we behave? How do we act in good times and bad? That thing will go south faster than anything else. I think most early stage startups fail because of co-founder issues.
Well, here's an interesting fact. I've had 3 startups, and the first 2 I had with the same co-founder. And for all 3 startups, I did not start with a co-founder. And it's not because I didn't want one. It's because we weren't fully aligned on the business idea yet. So as you talk about value alignment, it's not just about how you make decisions. And it's, are you as passionate about the idea as me? Right. And so my first co-founder, we worked together. He was my contractor for 1.5 years. Right. Like I was one of his customers until it no longer made sense for us not to be co-founders because he grew passionate about the idea I was working on. With eWebinar, same thing, right? I had a dev shop. David, who's my life partner, became my co-founder 1 year into the project, but he grew passionate about it because he was sitting beside me for 1 year, listening to me talk about it and build this product and seeing the product come to life. And then it no longer made sense for us not to be co-founders because he started helping with the product and then the product started helping or started working. So it actually really pains me when I get these messages from founders like, how do you find a co-founder? I need a co-founder. I'm like, why do you need a co-founder right now? You don't have to start with one.
You're in the age of generative AI and no code, low code. You know how easy it is today to validate a product by just putting something no code and then leveraging ChatGPT and open APIs to make it move. I think you can get far without a co-founder in the early days. What's harder is finding somebody who shares that passion for the problem space, for the customer, because ultimately, if you hate your customers and you're just passive in it for the money, you will either burn out or you won't last long. And building anything great is a long freaking slog. So you need somebody who's passionate about the customer or the problem space, just as you are, so they continue to show up. And you guys have an alignment of values, so it helps with decision making. And as you scale, it helps scale the culture according to values, or else this person will say night and you'll say day, and people will be confused when they look at misalignment as you grow. But a lot of investors will tell you, oh, I think you need to find a co-founder. And what they're trying to say is, I'm looking to de-risk my investment. One person means single point of failure. And that's a reason for you to leverage the technology at your disposal, no code, low code, generative AI, and push a solution out, get some customers, build an audience. Paying with money is cheaper than paying with equity. And if you can try before you buy, eventually maybe somebody will get close to that level of founder equity status. But Alex and I, we brought in one of our first employees, stayed with us till the end, till most recently. And eventually we gave him close, more equity than any of the employee. Not founder level, but he had equity because he stayed, right? So because the staying is very important. The worst is you find a co-founder, don't ever give anyone vested equity. It has to always be vesting. But if you give them vested equity, they stay for 6 months and you guys fall apart and now this person has stake in your company.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like equity is like toothpaste.
Yeah.
Once it's out, you can't get it back in the tube.
Yeah.
So you don't have to split your house from day one. Like, and the thing is, passion, you cannot fake.
Yeah.
You can maybe for a day. But when I talk about co-founder passion is the only way you know if the other person has passion is if you work with them, right? Are they thinking about it all the time? What are their non-asked deliverables, right? Are they trying to be creative? Do they want to contribute? Not just get the equity so that they can be a co-founder of a startup, right? And that's one thing that I see a lot is as you talk about co-founder conflicts, is at some point, maybe people feel like, oh, I'm working harder than you. I'm contributing more than you, but we split our house. What do I do? My co-founder wants to leave. They don't want to quit his job. Like, like all those things. All of those things can be avoided if you just take some time to find the right person.
And those splits don't have to be equal, right? I think it's a combination of co-founders have different responsibilities. A CTO who's building a product is very different than the founder that's talking to investors, getting customers, figuring out what to build, the point person for all the drama, fundraising, all of that stuff. So I think like you got to point system the roles, not the titles, right? And then figure out the equity from there, because it can't be equal, right? The effort is never equal, even if the passion is equal.
And the second one is, the second BS advice is partners and married couples cannot work together.
Yeah, but for every one of those, for every BS advice you get, right, there is success stories. So you look at Eventbrite.
Canva.
Yeah, Canva. Very successful companies, right?
Yeah.
I think what matters is, this is the most underrated thing, but the most important thing. Great companies and great relationships are built on great alignment, on purpose, vision, mission, and values. And if you're aligned, I don't care, you're a couple, you're siblings, if there is solid alignment and there is passion for the problem space, it becomes easier to work together.
Yeah.
Right? Egos kill more relationships, business and personal, than anything else. And again, investors are coming from a point of, I need to de-risk my investment. If you're a solo founder, that's risky for me, because if something happens to you, what do I do? My investment is gone, right? I got to find now somebody to replace you. If a couple, they have a divorce or some personal issue, it's going to come into work. What do I do in this situation? So I want to empathize with where the investors are coming from, because if we had to put our money into a similar situation, and I am an angel investor, I'm an LP in a bunch of funds, I am going to want to have the least riskiest situation, right, that I can trust, not the anomaly. Hey, you're an anomaly. I know it's worked in anomalies, but this is what the commonplace says. And I think that's where the BS advice comes from.
The thing is, David is my husband.
Yeah.
My co-founder. And people are like, oh, I can never work with my partner. How do you make this work? It must be awful. You're always talking about work. Honestly, I cannot imagine building my company with anyone else. Not just because he's a brilliant CTO and a brilliant business person, but we nomad. We love to prioritize fun over work. We love hanging out with our friends. We have the exact same schedule. That's amazing. We have fun all the time. We also work on the same hours, right? Like, yeah, okay, well, we talk about work all the time, but you know what? We're in a startup. Like, I embrace that, right? I'm integrating my kind of work-life balance. I love the fact that we're building a company together and that we're bootstrapping it and that we have the same shared values. And when we are successful, we share it between the two of us. Like, how amazing is it that I don't have to split 50% with someone else? Like, I'm keeping it in the family.
I love that. And I've been chasing Vivi to do the next thing we do together. Because think about it. I've been dating her since we were 16, 17, right? In our teens. I was her prom date. And you go from dating, then you go to jobs. She became a physician, demanding job. I became an entrepreneur. I spent the last 10 years with my co-founder more than with my family. Now I'm in my 40s. If I'm going to do another startup, and everyone knows it's a long freaking slog, 10 years, would I want to spend it with my co-founder, or would I want to spend it with my family? Like, I'm at this loggerheads where I know if I spend it with another person, by the time another 10 years elapse, my kids are in their 20s. And my relationship with my wife would also imagine doing one startup where you're already distanced. Now that we've taken a break after having a partial exit, we spend more time together than ever before. If I put myself in a situation, it's going to take me away from that relationship and with a co-founder. And when time comes, you have the other exit. Now I'm in my 50s. And then you hit the situation where, I spent all my time at work. Now all of a sudden I have nothing to do. and I got to spend time with this person that I've barely spent time with. And then it's like starting new in many ways.
Yeah, and here's what I learned about that. If you ever do start a company with her, it's like any relationship. Revenue and profit solves everything.
Yeah.
The only scenarios where I've seen, partners, romantic partners not working out, even siblings, is when the business is not going well. Do your best to make sure that you have profit, and then everything is going to be fine.
But oftentimes also the ego creeps in, right? Right. The public facing founder gets all the press articles and the podcast interviews, and the behind the scenes founder doesn't. That leads to maybe some break. Like, am I not working? Am I not the co-founder? Why am I not mentioned? All of those things can be solved if you have an alignment of values. There's mutual respect, right? And so I think it's very important going in, delineating the roles. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is how we're going to behave in good times and bad. I'm not going to micromanage you on these things, and you're not going to, because I trust you're going to deliver according to these timelines. And if not, we'll have a conversation about it.
But also paper everything as if that's not your relative. Like it
100%.
really pains me when people are like, oh yeah, like it's okay. We've got a handshake deal, even with best friends, right? Or friends. We've got a handshake deal, or it's okay. He or she's not going to screw me out of this. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's like signing a prenup, right? It's just like, know the terms of your exit, and then you can move forward as business partners, but also, relatives.
Treat everything business related, personal related, like you're doing right by the people you're serving. Your life is not just about you. It's about your family, your kids, all of that. Your business is not just about you. You have a responsibility towards customers, investors, and employees. And if you make any decision that will hurt that dynamic, hurt other people, you should think very carefully about it. So paper everything. I'm actually more a proponent of working with your spouse than working with other friends or relatives. Because friends or relatives, they're not in your face every single day, and they can take you for granted. I think a spouse has to see you every day and has to be answerable to you, and they're less likely to screw you over or take you for granted on a professional project than a friend or a relative. Like, it's like you lend money to your friends and then they just disappear, right? This happens all the time. But I think like it's more... it's different with a spouse.
Yeah. The third one is biggest TAM is the best business.
Yeah. Like everybody, the slide that precedes the hockey stick is the big TAM circle. And, the world has trillions of people. And if I can only get 2% of this, we'll be a $1 trillion company. That doesn't work, right? This top-down TAM doesn't work. Because there's lots of people going after that. There are a lot of brands that are more recognizable going after that. So the other side of it is every small niche can eventually grow into a larger TAM. Like Facebook started with Harvard, right? Slack started with just internal chat. Every small TAM can grow larger. Like Airbnb was just an extra, air mattress in your room. So every small TAM can grow large. But when you go so large and try to please everyone, you sometimes end up pleasing no one. I'm a big fan of niching down versus niching up.
And here's the thing. My last startup could not be smaller. Like it was an open house software, but really for real estate agents only in the US. Like real estate is so regionalized that the business is not transferable through countries, right? Maybe Canada a little bit, but not really.
Yeah.
And because we were so niche, we were the market leader after 5 years, and then we were acquired. We would not be a good acquisition target if the whole world was our market, because our customer base was so tiny. So it was because we were small that we were acquired. But I also think about the other side of the coin of that is, what kind of business do you want to build, right? Not every business has to own 1% of the whole world to be a great business, right? You think about the local coffee shop. How big is that TAM? Right? But it's still a great business. Restaurants, same thing, right? So I think you have to just be really true to the company that you want to build. And it's okay if you don't become a unicorn, if that's not what you want. Because between zero and unicorn, there are millions of businesses that give people really great lives.
There's more than one way to build a successful company, right? So I think the perspective here is, if you're chasing the unicorn dream, you're chasing a valuation, and it's a 10-year journey, and you hope that eventually it'll give you an outsized return, multiples, tens of multiples on your revenue to an exit. Now that lottery is won by very few people, maybe 1%, because the math here is every investor wants to, at bare minimum, 3x the valuation, right? And they want a 100xer in their wish list. So they invest in every company that's going to be a 100xer. So when you raise at a 10 million valuation, a lot of companies get acquired for 30. When you raise at a 100 million valuation, there's not a lot of deals happening at 300. When you start raising at 200-300 million valuation, what you're signing up for is IPO or UnicornPrn. What you need to understand is talk to other founders and see, is that the journey you absolutely want to go on? It's a long freaking slog, and you may fail along the way. And maybe it might be better for you, if that's not what you're passionate about, to pick a smaller niche, build a profitable company, and sell it to a larger player, right? And do that over and over again.
The fourth one is something that's very personal to me, is you have to build something you have expertise in. And I'll tell you why. My first two companies were in real estate tech. That was my last job, or one of my earlier jobs in my 20s. I knew the real estate market really well. So I thought, I got to start a company in real estate, because that's where my connections are. And I think a lot of people do this, right? Like, you go to school to be a lawyer, you become a lawyer, right? You study finance, you become an investment banker. Why do we think that the expertise we choose when we're 18 is going to be what we love for the rest of our lives, right? We're sold this narrative, right? It's part of that white picket fence, right? Like, you go to school, you get a job, you earn money, you get a mortgage. So I thought I fell into that as well. And then for 10 years in those two startups, I kind of hated my job, but I didn't really know why. And it turns out, like, after I sold my last company, I had some time to think about it. I don't even like the industry. I didn't really like my customers. They were laggards in technology. It was super hard to sell to. And the thing is, I realized not once did I ask myself, what makes me happy? And I don't mean like what industry, right? I mean, like, what kind of life do I want to live? I want to live a life where I can have a product that sells 100% over the internet, right? My non-negotiables. I want to be able to, live anywhere in the world and not go to conferences and, all those things, right? And the products that I was selling was opposite to the life that I wanted to live. So after I sold my last startup, like, I inverse the triangle, right? Instead of going like education, career, and then try to find happiness, which is what most people do. I think that's why they end up living for weekends and evenings. I started with, what are the things that make me happy, right? What are my non-negotiables? I picked a product that fit those non-negotiables. And then I decided the skills part, the expertise part, was actually the easiest to learn. So nobody on our team has ever built a self-serve product, or a $100 product. Like, nobody on our team has PLG experience, but we picked it up because that's what we do as startups. So now I'm an advocate for choose the company and the product that makes you happy, because expertise is something that you can learn very easily.
The skill is always easy to learn. The will is harder. What makes it even harder is if you do things that you don't get joy from. A lot of what we start for, especially like immigrants or being born to immigrant families, is we're taught to negotiate, come from negotiables. Okay, you can't afford to live in the city, but your job's in the city, so I'm going to commute and live in the burbs. But I'm not going to sign up for that nanny because I'll compromise just so I can have a 2-week vacation a year. A lot of what we start from is negotiables in life. And I think if we start with non-negotiables, we'll end up happier. And I think it's very important when starting a company is to start from non-negotiables. Because think about it, one of the key non-negotiables is, do you have a passion for the customer or the problem that you're solving? Right? It's a long freaking slog. It took us like 10 years of Boast. If I hated my customers, I'd be done. I love the customers. So not only we built Boast, we built Traction as a community to serve that customer base. I wrote a Wall Street Journal bestseller for that same audience. It helps you going because you love that audience and you want to show up. If you hate your audience, you hate your customers, you hate what you're doing, you're just going to check out. It's funny because Jeff Lawson spoke at Traction and shared this in his talk, is that prior to building Twilio, he did StubHub and he did another startup. I think it was a checkout. It was an app. It was a payments sort of app, and he was at a skateboarding store, coding in the background. He's like, I hated our customers. They would show up and like skate all over the place, create noise. They were frustrating the hell out of me. And he's like, I hated it. And I just couldn't stick around. And he's like, both times when I stopped was because I hated the customer, right?
Yeah.
It's a long slog.
Yeah. So the fifth one is you should spend money on ads to create a repeatable leads engine, because if you spend $1, you can get $2 back.
Oh, ads are a drug in my view.
Yeah.
So, CPMs are up, right? Google, Facebook, TikTok, right? What these companies, how they make more money from you is make it more and more difficult to squeeze the same ROI year over year, right? So it costs you twice as much to generate the same ROI every year from the same spend. That's how they keep you there. Ads are a drug. I kid you not. You'll get used to spending it, and then you'll have to spend it forever. And I think if you want to build a long-term sustainable business, it's important to invest in an organic channel to sustainably acquire customers. Yes, in the early days, you're trying to test out, does this ICP, does this ideal customer profile work? Does this market work? And you can invest a little bit in ads. But if that's your 100% strategy, then in my view, it's a drug that's going to cost you more and more over time.
I feel like that's the strategy you should run if everything else is exhausted, right? There's so many different ways to get eyeballs nowadays.
Yeah.
Like through content, through personal branding and all those things. Like, especially in the early days, you have no money to spend. Like, we don't have money to spend. But if we're talking about early stage startups, like, I don't even know who I am yet. I'm at like 1.6 million ARR right now. We still don't have messaging figured out. So if we pour money into ads, because we've done it before, that it would just be wasted. And that's not evergreen. Whereas like you're on a podcast, it's evergreen, right? You write a post, you write an article, you write a blog, all that is evergreen. People discover it forever. And it's free, right? It's your time, but it's quote unquote free. So I definitely think like a lot of people will tell you, oh yeah, spend some money on ads, test messaging. Call your customer and test your messaging.
Call your customer, call your prospects, test messaging. In writing this book, I talked to some of the most sustainable brands over time that started not in the 2000s, but like the Apples, like folks behind the Apples and the Harley Davidsons. And I found something very interesting. Every obscure idea that eventually became a global enduring phenomena, from Christ and Christianity to CrossFit, went through the exact same 4 stages. People listen to you, you have an audience. You bring that audience together to interact with one another, it becomes a community. When that community comes together to create impact towards a purpose beyond your profit or product, it becomes a movement. And when that movement has undying faith in its purpose through sustained rituals, over time it becomes a cult or religion. So audience, community, movement, religion. We're in an interesting point in time where people have the opportunities to build audiences through social platforms and then turn those audiences into communities and then mobilize them to build movements and cults. And ads are something that will, if you continue to invest in drugs, then you're going to be hooked onto something that you're relying on somebody else, not on your customers. Rely on your customers to bring you more customers. That is the most scalable and sustainable way to grow.
Absolutely. So the 6th one is also very close to my heart, is don't outsource, hire locally, because contractors aren't as dedicated.
Ooh.
And for context, our entire team is contractors, because I know I'm bad at managing people. I've never been good at it. And I wanted to start this company with no employees, just contractors. And that's why that's close to my heart.
Hey guys, real quick. Think about how you found out about this podcast. Maybe you saw it on social or someone sent it to you. The only way this grows is by word of mouth. So if you're willing to help us out by sharing it with others you think would enjoy this podcast as much as you do, it would mean a lot to us. Whether that's writing a review, sharing a tweet, or telling your next door neighbors, that would be amazing. Thanks so much, and now let's get back to the episode.
You know, like we said, right? Some of the other advice, like don't find work with a co-founder, husband and wife relationships in business don't work. This is the same advice coming from a point of de-risk yourself. They just think that somebody who's not passionate about your business in the same way you are is a business risk, not an asset. But this is 2024. Costs of hiring in the US and Canada have skyrocketed, right? You've now created an environment where there have been a record number of layoffs. And during the pandemic, you overhired, and now you've got a bunch of mediocre people in the workforce that cost more and more entitled. And I feel people who are in like Eastern Europe and Asia and the Middle East are more dedicated than the local workforce. There's less drama, and they want to make money. They're hungry for money. And I feel like the local workforce, no matter how much you give, is not enough. Like a cost of a junior engineer in San Francisco ends up being like $250,000 to $300,000, right? So you don't just look at salary. You look at stock options. You look at recruiter fees, because to hire local, you need to compete. And so then you leverage recruiters. And then benefits, onboarding, and ramp time. And then if they leave in a year or two, which is very common, it's offboarding. It ends up costing you $250,000 or more. As a founder in early stages, we talked about this. Your number one responsibility is your customers, your employees, your shareholders, right? That's it. So by making that decision, are you doing right by your business? Like, don't let somebody else's BS advice or patriotism ruin your life, right? Or ruin your business. Hire local when it makes sense. This person is going to be a 10x person. But the best talent, especially in the post-pandemic world, is everywhere.
Yeah.
Find the right person for your business. And I almost feel like having somebody on a contract, you can hold them accountable for an outcome without emotion, versus, especially with certain generations, you got to provide a lot of emotional support, which I feel with contractors, you don't.
This is the biggest misconception that I wanted to demystify, right? Like contractors are not as dedicated. Why is that true, right? A contractor doesn't mean you only own part of their time. We have 10 contractors that are full-time with us.
Yeah.
And the thing is, because the world is flat, because we're bootstrapped and we can only hire where we can afford, being a contractor is actually an accounting thing. They can't be an employee. I hire through a dev shop or an agency through there, and they work for that agency, right? And that's the structure of our company. If we can't contract, we can't exist, right? Our burn would be 3-4 times what it is. So I think as a startup, like, you make it work. And one of those things is you hire people where you can afford them. And you get to dictate what that relationship is. Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Is it very fractional? Like, we have a team of 10 full-time contractors, but we also have fractional people that work on a project basis because we don't need them full-time. And that's how we're able to keep our burn super low. But are they less dedicated? Because we give them the same benefits that we have, right? Like, we care about them. We connect with them. They are part of our team. We have stand-ups. You know, like, it feels like a team, but we pay them as a contractor. And that's the biggest misconception is, oh, they're just going to quit anytime. Well, you know what? They're not going to if you treat them well, like a team member.
I feel one of the things that creates employee-employer bonding or loyalty is also alignment of values and how you treat each other, right? You hired an employee, you hired a contractor. You basically don't treat the employee well, hustle porn the hell out of them, you own their time. What happens? They're going to be mentally checked out and they'll jump ship. If you treat people with love and help them grow, they'll treat your business with love and your business will grow. But that doesn't mean that you know, you are going to spend as much money as possible just to show patriotism to the US or Canada, hire local. You need to do what's right for your business. And if that means you can find comparable person in Asia or Middle East or India for a tenth of the price because it costs less to live there, then do what's right for your business. It's important for you to stay in business for the long haul than to hire according to what society deems correct for you.
Okay, the seventh one is you need to hire seasoned executives or superstars to help you grow.
Ooh. What's
Also
been
very close to my heart, this one.
what's been your experience? Because I can go on and on this.
I mean, without going into too much detail, you know, we've worked with people that have never worked in startups, people that were really successful in bigger companies, thinking that because we're a smaller company that they would do even better. It has 100% not been the case. Like the skills from a big company do not really transfer to a tiny startup where you have to be agile, creative, Swiss Army knife, right? Jack of all trades. Like most people, I think, in bigger companies are just used to working with a lot more resources and a lot more credibility, which we just don't have.
You know, this is one of the shit that VCs will tell you and so-called advisors, right? You got to hire seasoned executives. Do not hire anyone who hasn't made the journey from where you are to where you want to go. Especially do not hire big company specialists, because what you need until maybe you're 10 million ARR or more is generalists, because you don't have a lot of stuff figured out. If you hire a specialist, they get typecast in this role and they can't deliver. Let's say you hire a SEO specialist, but you haven't figured out a way to acquire customers. So you don't know if SEO is going to work. What happens then if this SEO doesn't work for you? You fire this person? You won't, because you're like, okay, you know, we hired this person. It kind of sucks. 3 months later, we got to fire, or 6 months later. So then you tell this person, maybe, okay, let's figure out another way to grow. This person can't. You know why? Because they pride themselves in being a specialist in one field. And before they go and try something else, they will want to master that versus just trying it, right? Like in startups, perfection is the enemy of done. So with this big company seasoned executives, I think it's the biggest BS advice of all times, because when big company seasoned execs come into your company, they cannot roll up their sleeves and they cannot execute at the pace and level you need to. And so this whole PowerPoint pontification takes over, which kills your progress. And in the early days, which is the time that you can grow the fastest, velocity is the name of the game. It's your currency. And so just avoid it. When you hire a seasoned executive, you know you're going to pay more. You know the total cost of ownership is also higher because they can't roll up their sleeves. They'll hire local, they'll hire from their big company teams, they'll hire people to do the job. That whole decision will burn a massive hole in your pocket, and you won't be better off from a revenue and growth standpoint anyway.
The eighth one is you need to give your team members more time to prove themselves.
Ooh, I hate this one.
Yeah, I also do. I do as well. I actually wrote an article. Actually, I wrote a LinkedIn post that got so much traction because so many people were hating on it that Business Insider asked me to write an article on the same topic, which is I spent $500,000 something like I spent $500,000 because I didn't fire fast.
You know, here's the thing, right? Like I keep saying this over and over. My general theme is, in a business, you need to do right by your customers, shareholders, investors, and employees. And every decision should come from that point. So if you hire somebody and they're slacking off, they're not delivering the outcome you signed them up for, they're doing a crime against you, right? In a way, they're causing you to do wrong by your shareholders and by your employees and by your customers. And how long can you take that? I wouldn't. And so I think the way to solve this is not make it an emotional decision, because it's not. It's a business decision and it needs to generate an ROI. It's the same thing. You go and hire a doctor for a procedure, or anything you buy, right? You hire a plumber. You give the plumber more time, but your faucet's leaking and the whole house is flooded. You keep giving them more time, or you replace with somebody else who can fix the problem, right? Your business is like that. They'll flood your business and eventually it'll go under if you keep giving people more time. Every role has a leading indicator of what success is and has a goal, right? In order to meet a goal, you need to check off those leading indicators. And if people are not checking off the leading indicators, you know that the goal is not going to be met. And I think, I'll summarize this just for one department. If you hire marketer, let's say, and the first thing the marketer comes and does, like VP marketing, is like, oh, we need to rebrand and do the website. And you're an early stage company. This means literally we need to redo the brand, and the website means I need a hall pass for 6 months. What is the right thing for a head of marketing to come and do is run some demand gen campaigns to improve lead velocity, right? If in the first 30 days they can't run some campaigns that'll improve the lead flow, then this person is never going to. If you hire a product manager, head of product, and this person is spending time in spreadsheets and not talking to any customers, things are not going to make it in the roadmap quick enough, right? And it's your responsibility to hold people accountable to the leading indicators and timelines, goals with timelines and leading indicators.
I mean, I think in my experience, a startup is so small that everybody's so visible.
Yeah.
And your gut feeling is usually right? Especially with remote teams, like either people are self-motivated and they deliver, right? Or they don't and they make excuses for it because And many times in my past, like I kind of knew, but I didn't want to admit it. People saying they were working, but they're not, but then they're not really delivering. They make up an excuse. Like you just, I think as a founder, need to get better at like ripping that Band-Aid off and not thinking firing fast is, cruelty or like ruthlessness. It's really just, like you said, doing right by your team, maybe your investors, your co-founder, your business, just to find the best people for that job.
I've never, ever come across anyone who didn't regret delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just hard. It's practice.
In fact, I've had people apologize to me for not taking my advice. I'm like, the signs are all there, right? If in the first 30 days, you're a CTO and you don't improve dev velocity, or in the first 30 days you join as a VP of sales and you're not, your first call to action is, hey, HR person, can we find a recruiter to find me salespeople? What is your job as a sales leader? To improve sales, right? To exceed quota. What is the leading indicator of that? You coach people and you hire people. If you can't coach people and you can't bring on at least 2 reps from your past job that were crushing it, then there's something wrong. If you can't hire people as a sales leader and you're looking for a recruiter now, that's a problem, right? So I think it's important. Everyone needs to look at it not as oh, you know what? Am I doing wrong by this person? You have to look at it as, am I doing right or wrong by my customers, my shareholders, and my employees? And this group is far more important than this one person.
So the 9th one we've already touched on a little bit is you need specialists, right? And then here's the thing, right? I actually think that not only is jack of all trades good for a startup, I would rather pay more for a jack of all trades because a jack of all trades can do more for me. It's like one person equals 3 people than to hire 2 specialists that have a lot of experience, right? Because of the velocity, because this person, usually jack of all trades in my experience are more curious, right? They're more willing to learn, right? They almost get they get a thrill from picking up new things, right? And these are the people that you need in a startup. And so my experience is find as many jack of all trades as you can and just cultivate them and get them to pick up more things.
You need trajectory people, not tenured people. If you keep hiring people on tenure versus trajectory in a startup, you will become the very thing you set out to disrupt. and the point of that being, you don't have anything figured out. You can't hire a specialist until the role you're hiring for is coin operated. Don't tell me I'm hiring an SEO person when you're not generating 50% of your leads through SEO.
Yeah,
you can't tell me that, right?
The 10th one is you need to track everything.
This one is interesting, and we might have differing views here, but let's hear your perspective.
So we track nothing,
Okay.
right? Not because we don't want to.
So
We-
define track.
So, like every PLG specialist consultant will say you need to track all your users, where they're spending time, all your features. Like, we don't have any mechanism for that, right? So our product's been live for 3.5 years. We're at 1.6 million. We're only starting to have time to do that because we've just been so busy catching up, making the product stable, like building features to keep people, to convert people, all those things. But we were able to track more qualitative sentiments, right? We stay very close to our customers. We do things they ask for, but we don't have a lot of metrics. We of course have, Stripe and, ChartMogul to track revenue. We have an accountant, we track our website and our blogs with really basic stuff, right? Like Google Analytics, but we don't track everything. But I would say that we still have a pretty good business.
A lot of people get into this analysis paralysis, right? Every business is part data and part emotion. A lot of the data you can't collect. Traction, our community, was a big driver of leads for Boast, right? Some of our biggest clients came through it. Our biggest partnership that does $3+ million a year in revenue with us came through it. Even the growth equity firm that bought half the company and partially exited us came through it. But we never tracked anything in the early days because we were bootstrapped. We didn't have Salesforce.com. Leads would come in one of few ways: through the website, which wasn't integrated with any marketing automation, and they would straight away come to my inbox. Or we host events and webinars, which is straight away in my inbox. Now we have salespeople. If I dump all these inbound leads and these event leads to them, they're going to get frustrated. They're like, I'm swimming through this garbage. So I would manually look through all the leads that were positive and forward it to the salespeople. Guess what I'm doing with the leads that weren't good for them? I'm not sitting and putting it one by one in some CRM, right? And putting notes, because I'm a founder and I have 10 other things to do. So it would just be gone, right? I just put the relevant leads that are going to convert, or there's some semblance, if they're a fit. Basically, if it's the right ideal customer profile for a company and they can turn into a customer. If they are a completely out of whack garbage lead, I'm not putting it in there. That kind of activity makes a lot of people feel good because you're generating something, but it's like lots of action and no outcome. So when we started to hire like marketing leaders, they're like, oh, there's no data. We need to find data. We don't have good historical data. I'm like, yes, we don't have good historical data because I was manually forwarding the leads and I was studying them. Anything that was garbage would not go in the system. That doesn't mean we don't have data or the data doesn't exist. Here's the way to look at it. Closed won is the clients we signed.
Yeah.
Closed loss are the clients we lost. Any other leads below it weren't sales qualified leads. They were garbage. So why are you bothered with that? Just figure out a way to generate leads. I do think, though, a few things are important to track. One is, and generally for me, those are leading indicators. One is, are employees happy, right? And those are emotional things. Are customers happy? And the function of that is they're using your product and you're talking to them and you're hearing it. And the third thing is there money in the bank?
Yeah.
If you track those three things, you don't have to obsess about everything. And this is what makes a business. Are customers happy? Are employees happy? If employees are happy, the customers will be happy. And is there money in the bank?
I mean, I would say the reason why we never, quote unquote, track everything according to the startup world is because we were growing every month.
Yeah.
Right. Like we never lost money. We're always growing in the beginning, like 5 to 10%, now like 3 to 5%, like consistently, like slowly but surely. But if there was a sharp drop in everything, we'd be more desperate about it. Right. But I do believe in tracking things, but not at the expense of slowing you down as we talk about velocity.
Analysis paralysis, right? Pontification is the death of all progress. You, as a small startup that is bootstrapped, have limited resources. And the cost of tracking everything sometimes will drive you nuts. And quite literally, there's a leading indicator for everything. Customers, have they signed up? Are they using the product? Yeah. Very easy metric to track. Employees, are they happy? Conversations, very easy to track. And is there money in the bank? Just look at your freaking Stripe
The
account.
only important thing in the early stage.
Why does everything else matter? Like then you can extrapolate growth rate and velocity and all of these things eventually as you add. But I think in the early days, it's very important to keep your tracking simple. The other thing to tie with tracking, we could never do attribution on traction because think about it. Somebody comes to your community event, right? They have a great time. I mean, we host conferences where like Uber CEO and Atlassian, some of the biggest names. And then as we brought on new marketing leaders, they said it doesn't generate anything. I'm like, and everything is coming inbound. So I'm like, let me work this journey for you. They come to an event, they enjoy it, they forward our website to a colleague, the colleague goes online and requests a demo, and that's inbound. Multi-touch attribution is very difficult. And so to perfectly attribute something, you got to take note of the emotional side and the data, right? If you can't just come from data and say, I'm making data-driven decisions because every decision is part data and part emotion. That's how humans make decisions.
Absolutely. The 11th thing I know is close to both of us is not really a piece of advice, but it's when people who have never built companies give you advice.
Ooh. You know, I have this rule right now, which starts with, I think how we started the conversation, right? This Andrew Tate buys a Bugatti. People are like, oh, this color, that color. Oh, I would have gone with a different color. Like giving you all kinds of advice. It's like, what color is your Bugatti? Do not take advice from someone who hasn't been where you want to go. Armchair analysts are plenty in this world. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. Take advice from people who've been there. Like the last thing you want is an obese person telling you how to get a six-pack. Would you hire that person as a personal trainer? No matter what their accolades are. They may have the best nutrition advice, but it's just hard. So why do you do that with your business, right? Like when you go to a gym, you will sign up for a trainer who is jacked. You will not sign up for a trainer that's obese. But somehow in business, we've normalized taking advice from people who are just armchair analysts, and just do yourself a service and do not talk to armchair analysts. I understand in some fields you need the advice. Legal advice, get the best lawyer. Tax advice, get the best tax person. Specialist advice that you need. But general business advice, right, like growth, and if you haven't done it, in my scenario, don't listen to it.
Here's the irony, right? How many VCs have never built their own companies? I'll tell you a story. I was in kind of an accelerator program. Wasn't like a real accelerator, but it was a program where one of the events was like each founder, me included, would go up to this long table full of 24 mentors. And these were like investors, angel investors, VCs. They're supposed to be VCs. And this was like, a while ago in my last company. And then you would pitch your idea and then they would be like a peanut gallery. In that room, I didn't realize this until I was like up there, there were only 2 people, because I read their profiles, there were only 2 people out of 24 that had ever built their own company. Some were like early employees, right? I'm sorry, but if you exited as an early employee, like you can twist it however you want, but you did not build that company. You may be an investor, but you did not build that company. But for some reason, people who are investors feel like they've earned this right to critique your idea or how I was building the company. So I'm standing up there for 20 minutes and they were ripping me apart, like so badly. And they were like, well, this is an open house sign-in. Why don't you do it for offices? Why don't you do it for car dealerships? Like your business is not big enough. Your TAM's not big enough. To the point where when I went back to the back room, my buddies were like, wow, like that was really harsh. And for the first time I realized none of these idiots have built companies. They don't even realize how hard it is to change a product to another industry. You don't just do that. Right? There's so many things to build a company in a niche industry that you just doesn't do something overnight. And if I don't do it, if I don't take your advice, they were telling me that I wasn't open-minded. So I just thought that was stupid. So ever since then, I'm like, I am not taking any advice or even talking to anyone who's never built their own company before.
This is the Shark Tank hangover, right? This is what we say. The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn, where the highest valued companies are the most revered. And what makes that happen? Who are the kingmakers? The VCs. And so they're placed on the pedestal. It started even before TechCrunch. It started with Shark Tank, right? And even if you look at the cooking industry, it's Gordon Ramsay. Like, it's like you have to be an asshole to give people advice. I went through this actually. I was emceeing a startup pitch contest, and one of the angels, just the first piece of advice or feedback he gives was, that was a horrible, horrible pitch. There were maybe 1,000 people. I think this was a traction event way back in the day. And I literally stopped him. I said, you've never built a company. You don't know what it's like to go on a journey of a founder with no money and will it into existence. If you can't be polite, get off my stage. The whole audience applauded, right?
Wow.
We need more people to call out this bullshit. Like, just because you have money doesn't qualify you to be an asshole to somebody, because your experience, your perspective is quite different, right? And it's also telling. If somebody's going to be an asshole to you before they even give you your money, you know how they're going to behave once you take their money. Run away from these people.
The last one is when someone gives you any sort of advice on something you just don't want to do. And an example of that is, so many people try to tell me, this is how you should grow e-webinar. You should start a podcast that talks about webinars. Do you know how bored I would be if I do that? Yeah, sure. Like, it's gonna generate some leads, but I don't give a shit about it. I don't want to do it. And here's the thing about business. It's not just about revenue. It's also about your lifestyle. So anytime someone tells me something I just don't want to do, and they'll be like, why don't you want to do it? I'm like, I just don't want to. It doesn't give me joy.
You have to bear the cross of your decisions, right? The money you make is only part of it. If you hate the work you're doing, it's going to be a long slog. Think about it. You have to show up day in, day out to make the money that you have the goal for. But if you hate showing up, if you hate the process, you'll burn out, you'll leave, you'll quit. Here's the thing, right? Like, we've been conditioned as kids by parents to praise results, like get praise on results, get reprimanded on results. We've not been taught to enjoy the process. As a result, our focus is all on the end goal, not the process. Ultimately, I think the most successful people, they're in love with the process and they show up day in, day out because they love the process. And the score eventually takes care of itself. Like Michael Jordan, like, he wasn't the greatest basketball player in high school, but he's the greatest of all time, right? I think loving the process and what you do is so important, especially as an entrepreneur, because it's not one and done.
Yeah.
You have to show up. And unlike a 9-to-5 job, you have to show up like 80, 100 hours a week. You have to sacrifice the things that you would rather be doing, like going and partying maybe with friends. Or I almost missed the birth of 3 of my kids. Vivi was in labor all 3 times, and I was at a different location, and I had to fly back in just in the nick of time. If I hated what I was doing, how miserable I would be. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think you have to make a lot of sacrifices. You better love what you're doing, or else it's going to be a hard pill to swallow.
So what is your one hot take from today's conversation on how founders can ignore some of this BS advice?
I think everything is a framework and a filter, right? Like, I think live your life with frameworks and filters. The first piece of filter is, do not take advice from people who haven't been where you want to go. Opinions are like assholes, and everyone has one, and you don't need it. Take advice only from experts. The best tax expert, the best legal expert, founders. Do not listen to everyone else. Just in one ear, out the other. In fact, tune it out. Don't hang out where they hang out. If you know you're going to go to an event and get all kinds of advice, don't go there.
Yeah. My hot take is, there are so few things in life that you can't recover from, right? Every decision you make, you can make it again and again and again if it doesn't work, right? And you've mentioned this before, is you're the only person that is responsible for the decisions that you make, especially if you're the founders. So one of the best advice I got way back when from one of my mentors was, Melissa, you can do anything you want, but one of those decisions will help you get out of bed easier in the morning. So just pick that one. And I never forgot that. So for me, it's just know that it's never a dead end.
Definitely. And that's it for today's episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit the subscribe button to the Unicorn Porn podcast on your favorite podcast app. Head over to our website, UnicornPrn.com, to see the show notes of every episode. Unicorn Porn is spelled UnicornPrn. That's UnicornPrn without the O. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have hot gossip to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about.
If you have topics you want us to rip apart, perhaps you got something you always wanted to say but didn't have the cojones to do it, we'll do it for you. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, Lloyd Lobo and Melissa Kwan.